I'm live with Dr. Crystal Heath. Here we go.
Freedom of information. Friday. FOIA. Friday.
So glad to be here with you, Crystal. Let's do it. You ready to FOIA it up, Crystal?
Friday.
Yes, I guess I am.
You seem like you're really, awesome. Let's do it. Welcome to FOIA Friday, where we explore our right to freedom of information in America while we still have it. I'm live with Dr. Crystal Heath. My name is Skyjack Morgan. Welcome.
Welcome. And I was thinking maybe every FOIA Friday we should explain what FOIA is, because so many people ask in the chat. Like if you haven't tuned in every week and you don't know what FOIA is. So FOIA stands for Freedom of Information Act requests. And in the United States, you can get access to government documents if you know how to ask for them. And why do we do this? Well, because
Congress is nice. Congress said, like, hey, we want to pass a law that lets that in the spirit of transparency of our government so that we can all be participants.
yes. But what's the main goal? Why do we want information? Well, we want to change the narrative somehow. We want to change society. The thing is, most muckraking journalism, even if it's groundbreaking, vanishes from the public consciousness soon after it appears. But discoveries found from FOIA documents have shook society to its core and led to huge policy shifts. What are some of those shifts, Sky? Do you know some of those shifts?
Well, we went
Some
over
of
them a
those
little.
FOIA documents. I think it's good to remind folks. with
Yeah,
those.
I mean, the ones that come to mind are my Abu Ghraib was the one that really shook me. I think Abu
Mhm.
Ghraib was the big FOIA that kind of like made me know what a FOIA was. When that happened, that's how I learned what a FOIA was, I think. I don't
Yeah.
think I ever heard of it before that, because the images were so shocking. It was just that information was there in plain sight. Someone just had to request it, and then we were able to find out what happened.
Yeah. And then President Obama introduced some executive orders on detainee treatment. The CIA's MK Ultra LSD mind control experiments prompted new ethical regulations for human research. FOIA to force the Federal Reserve to release data on secretive bailouts of domestic and foreign banks revealed over $7 trillion in undisclosed emergency lending. So that's why we dedicate 1 hour a week to FOIA documents and teaching you how to FOIA, because not enough people are working on getting these documents, and it's a lot easier than you think. So,
Yeah,
Sky,
to
what have you?
demystify it too, right? We kind of want to
Yeah.
demystify it, because it seems like one of those things that people, it seems kind of scary. I always feel like I used to feel like it was something that, Wall Street, what was that movie called where with Deep Throat and the Watergate scandal, All the President's Men. I felt like those were the guys who got to do it. Robert
Like
Redford and
only
Dustin
lawyers
Hoffman.
can do this, right? No,
Yeah.
but
But
it
it's not.
turns out.
It's you and me, regular old citizens and even activists who should be spending time doing this, because this is how we get armed with information. This is how we get that. Tons of stuff. I mean, in animal rights, we talk a lot about you just mentioned a bunch of the political stuff, but also in animal rights, there's tons of FOIAs that have changed
Mhm.
a lot of the stuff you see in PETA, with like the double trouble with the cat who they made her deaf, and it's a famous picture
Yeah.
with the sonar drilled into her skull. That was all obtained via FOIA. So it's tremendously integral to activism. And it's not just, you don't have to wait for someone at PETA to do it. You don't have to wait for someone it works for the Wall Street Journal to do it. You can do it. And
Yep.
we'd like to demystify it for people and encourage them to do it, right?
Exactly.
And we even have a signal chat that you could be a part of if you want to learn more
Exactly.
about it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And help us.
and
Join our
help us
signal chat if you want to.
and help the
Um,
animals.
so this week we do have a special guest, Andrew deCoriolis. But before I introduce him, what do you got for us?
Well, I have this thing. I was looking at JBS, right? I really wanted to just to find out more about JBS, and I was trying to find out what was going on with JBS and find out through the SEC. And so the Security Exchange Commission, because ever since JBS gave $5 million to Donald Trump for his inaugural committee, they were not supposed to ever be on the NYSE. It was they were very much deterred from that for years because of all of their bribery scandals and their convictions and all the horrible things this company has done. But so I wanted to get into the SEC their comms to see what they were saying, because now during the first 100 days, they gave Donald Trump $5 million, and now all of a sudden they are traded on the NYSE. Right now, as of July 2025, you can now invest in the New York Stock Exchange into a Brazilian company that controls a vast amount of our farm-raised flesh, our animal-based protein. And it's funny because they come up a lot in all these house committee agriculture meetings, all this stuff. They come up all the time, but every time I try to dig into it and get more information from behind the scenes, I seem to be hitting a brick wall. So, dear Mr. Morgan's letter responds to your request dated June. So this is all the way back in June. I requested this one. I wanted Pilgrim's Pride information, investigations, enforcement actions, subpoenas, or inquiries involving JBS USA Holdings, and Pilgrim's Pride. And they gave me the fee waiver, so that's okay. They said I could do the fee waiver, but they said there's no way they could get it done in the amount of time that is, because I think, what do they have, Crystal? It's like 30 days they're supposed to get it done, or 20 days they're supposed to give me my information.
Yeah, no, that rarely. Oh, sometimes it does get that fast, but it rarely does it actually.
Yeah. So in the law, it's supposed to be a short amount of time, but it's actually almost never is. The potential, they're saying that the need to research, they wanted a 10-day extension. These unusual circumstances, the need to search for and collect records from an organization geographically separated from the office. Well, these are electronic, so I think that's weird. The potential volume of records responsive to my request, and the need for consultation with 2 or more other offices having a substantial interest in either the termination or subject matter. They found 2 boxes, though, of hard copy records and 102 gigabytes of electronic records, which is equivalent to approximately 816 boxes of records that may be responsive to my request.
It's weird they have records. Their metric is boxes. Their measure of is boxes.
They should do it by weight, right?
Yeah. Okay.
We found 6 pounds of information for you. 6 pounds of paper, pet. It's they're doing kilograms or pounds. We don't know. So I'm considered other use, so I will not be charged, but which is fine. But I was pretty happy about that. But they're saying that that I will not be getting my information anytime soon. They're saying that I will
that's
get
how
it.
it is.
Yeah, they're saying that at present we anticipate that it may take 36 months or more before we can begin to process a request placed in our complex track. This is what called I learned that. I didn't know what a complex track was. I guess this is it. The records are voluminous. We would process them in our complex track. Under this law, agencies may provide for multi-track processing of requests for records based on the amount of work or time, or both, involved in processing requests. The SEC's regulation implementing multi-track processing is located here. So transcripts, testimony, exhibits, miscellaneous evidentiary materials. I may want to consider narrowing the scope of my request. And so, like, I don't know. What do you think I should do? Should I narrow the scope of my request, or should I just be like, yeah, take your time? I don't think
I don't
that
know.
narrowing. Yeah,
I just say take your time, because I don't know. Whenever you narrow it, I don't know. Unless you have like a really creative way to narrow it.
I don't, right? I just want anything. What's really weird though about it to me is that I've only asked what happened this year. I didn't want something. This was not the one that was like 10 years old, because JBS, before, a long time ago, I asked for one that was from back when JBS first was allowed to buy, when they were allowed to buy it. No, that one was Smithfield, because the Chinese company bought Smithfield. And so that one, they said it's too old, which is BS too, but they said it would just be too hard. But this one's this year. How we're in 2025. They're saying that there's these voluminous records on
Yeah.
paper. That doesn't, I just don't, that don't pass the sniff test. You know what I mean?
Um,
So I have to get back to them before September something, and tell them that I want them to go ahead with it. I say, what do I have to lose? They're doing it for free. I paid for it with my taxes.
yeah, totally.
You know, I might not know what happened with JBS, but I might be the first person to know too, because clearly there's a lot of info about this year about JBS, which is, I think, positive. That's on the bright side. I think there's going to be a lot, you know.
Yeah. Have you considered FOIAing the USDA Agriculture Marketing Service for any information? Just, I would be interested to see their communications about JBS being listed on the stock exchange. Maybe
I'm
just
glad-
like keywords stock exchange. And
I'm glad you mentioned that. Yeah, last week I did that actually.
Cool.
I FOIA'd USDA because I didn't think the SEC was going to get back to me. So I'm just going down the list. I'm doing well, last week I think I did actually Jim Costa about the same thing. But no, I definitely did the USDA marketing for what's going on there too. And they got back to me. They said, "Cool, we're on it." So hopefully we'll get something soon there. I think that the connection, though, I just want so much I don't know, this one with the fact that they were the largest contributor to the inaugural committee, the largest single contributor, bigger than anybody else, $5 million just cash to Donald Trump. And all of a sudden, the SEC and everyone changes their mind. Everyone across the board changes their mind about JBS being traded on the New York Stock Exchange. That is just such beautifully pure corruption that I would just love to be the person that just like got the comms from it. You know what? It'd be so nice. It'd be a nice little
Mhm.
a little badge, to go, like a little brownie point. What do you call those little badges that the brownies wear? The Girl Scout badges, like patches, I guess they are. I would wear a patch that says, "I found out. I got it." I don't know. I'd feel like one of those guys from All the King's Men if it came out that way.
Oh, cool. Well, we can hope, and we planted seeds for the future. Should we bring on our guest now? So
I think so. Yeah.
we
His
have a
name's
special.
Andrew
Go.
deCoriolis. Yeah, Andrew
Yes.
deCoriolis.
The executive director of Farm Forward, and he's been working on a story about the dairy bailouts. And we'll bring him on, say hi, and talk to him about what we worked on in the past. I guess I'll add some. Hello, Andrew.
Hey,
Did we-
how's it going?
Good. Did we pronounce your name correctly? I never
You got
know
it, deCoriolis.
Okay,
Yeah,
perfect.
you were in the
deCoriolis.
ballpark. And if there are, any French nationals, I apologize for not getting it actually accurate. There's the French family side would say it differently, but yeah, you did great.
deCoriolis,
Awesome.
like Coriolis is the Coriolis effect, the thing that causes hurricanes and
That's it.
tornadoes.
Oh.
Gaspard was a great uncle. So yeah, that's that is the family.
Wow.
Oh,
I had no idea.
wow.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I'm
You
glad
are one of the very few people who makes that connection. My Geology 101 teacher made that connection, and you might be the second in 20 years. So you definitely get a brownie point for that.
Yeah, I'm collected badges now. I'm just glad now that I took my science was geography in college. So
There you
that
go.
was we talked a lot about that old Coriolis effect. It's come in handy.
You got it.
Well,
Well, it's nice
now
to be with you
hopefully
guys talking FOIAs. Yeah.
the Coriolis effect will take effect. We can do the Coriolis effect on animal agriculture.
Taking it by
last-
storm.
Transition.
Last year we worked on a story together, and I'll just pull this up,
Yeah.
and it made the front page of the New York Times, and it was about, let's see if I can, oh, perfect. Cruel way to control bird flu and poultry giants cash in. And this was how some of the biggest companies making billions of dollars were receiving millions in bailouts. And the companies that received the most in bailouts were using ventilation shutdown to kill their birds. There's some really great quotes from this article. I'd love to like pull up here. So you said these payments are crazy making and dangerous. Not only are we wasting taxpayer money on profitable companies for a problem they created, but we're not giving them any incentive to make changes. Yeah, and it seems that that's still happening, right?
It is. It continues. The money spigot opened, and the dollars keep flowing. Yeah, from our perspective, these indemnity payments, are really just creating economic incentives for industrial animal producers to use the riskiest, most dangerous production practices that almost inevitably are going to lead to, bird flu contamination and infection, and it gives them every reason to keep those risky practices going. Because if they know that, they get paid either way, they get paid for these, very dangerous conditions, high concentrations of animals and so forth. And they get paid when things go south. So they know that, when they get bird flu, we're going to be here holding the bag. Taxpayers will be holding the bag. And so, we've been, along with the ventilation shutdown issue, which is obviously something you've been, really a major champion of. We've been trying to focus on this sort of taxpayer bailout piece, because I think for most Americans, you think, why are we paying billion-dollar companies for a problem that they primarily have and create? Doesn't make any sense. This is a totally unnecessary subsidy, and we're not even doing anything to use these funds to require companies to make changes so they reduce future risk. So it is really crazy making, and the work that we did together on poultry continued when the bird flu outbreak hit last year, hit dairy farms. And last June or July, the USDA opened one of their indemnity payment programs called ELAP to dairy producers who were experiencing losses because of bird flu infections on their farms. And so since then, we've been FOIAing records about the payments that the USDA is making through the ELAP program to dairy companies. And so we're just releasing right now the first sort of tranche of data from beginning of July last year to the end of the year, to December 31st. Already in the first 6 months of that program being open to dairy farms, $80 million went out the door to some of the largest dairy companies in the country. And when we looked at the kinds of dairy farms that are getting these bailouts, totally unsurprisingly, it's the largest industrial, feedlot concentrated dairy operations.
Yeah. Well, Andrew, when we're talking about I'm sorry to, we're talking about the subsidizing, because I'm looking at these numbers and it's like $2 billion that we're paying in bailouts to chickens. And now when we're talking about that with dairy farms, it's not the same, right? They're not culling all these dairy cattle. What are we paying for as taxpayers when it comes to these bailouts? Because it makes sense to me, right? I think it makes sense to everybody. Like at prima facie, these guys, in the name of food security, and they make all these things up about what they're doing with chickens, right? They killed all their chickens to stop the spread of bird flu. We pick up the tab. I don't think it's right. I don't think anybody should. But what about dairy farms? It doesn't make any sense. Like, something doesn't compute. They're not killing all these cows. What are we paying for? What are we buying for that money?
Yeah, sick cows produce less milk. So we're paying for the loss of milk production. When you get sick, when you get the flu, you're probably eating less, right? And when you eat less, if you're a lactating dairy cow, you're also going to produce less milk. And so we're paying those farmers for the decrease in milk production. And it's a little unclear when you get into the details of the programs, how exactly they're verifying that. Are they really going to the farms and saying, yeah, we confirmed that you had X amount of dollars less milk produced, and we'll pay you for that milk? My sense is they're not really doing any of that verification. So I think we're just paying farmers for the amount of milk that they say they lost. So who knows what's really happening on the farm level in many cases.
It was interesting. Anya Radaba tweeted in December, let's start by dispelling the general narrative I see here. There's nothing indemnity payment for beef and dairy cows. We lose money when an animal goes to beef, especially after she's been sick with flu. But yeah, so what would you is what Anya Radaba says true, that there's no indemnity payment for beef and dairy cows?
There's no indemnity payment if the cow goes to slaughter early.
Yeah.
So, the ELAP program, is just paying farmers for less milk production. They're not paying for the cow if she's sent to the beef industry, sent into slaughter for the beef industry. And one of the thoughts that I had was that, bird flu might increase the rates of culling or, killing cows, sending them into slaughter early. It seems like when that actually gets modeled out, I was just talking to an economist from UC Davis, that actually may not be the case, that, the economics in the beef and dairy industries are as such right now that when you throw in these bailout payments, it may be enough to keep the cows on the farm, even if they're producing less milk, rather than sell them into the beef industry, cull them. And so it doesn't seem like there's an increase in cull rates, despite, in California, like a huge percentage of the California dairies have now been infected, 3/4 or something. It doesn't seem like there's a big increase in the number of cull cows being sold into the beef market.
Interesting. Are you able to share some of the documents that you found?
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to show them. So
let me
let's see,
add
can you guys,
to the
there we go. You can
stage.
see my screen. Yeah, here we go.
Yeah.
So we've got a pretty standard letter that we sent to ELAP. Sky, to your point about the JBS documents, we really try to break our FOIAs down into like pretty bite-size, responsive pieces. So if we're asking for like multiple different types of documents, or we're asking for, let's say research or communications or the results of a payment program, we usually break those out into separate FOIAs in the hopes that they'll respond to some of them faster than others. And I don't know where we got that recommendation, but that's just the recommendation that we were given.
I'll take it.
Yeah, and so like we got our fee waiver request on this. It's a really simple request for records. We're really just asking for payments from this government program called ELAP from a certain date to a certain date. And we're asking for the kind of information to include in there. We want to know, the names of the farms, the address, the amount of money that was paid. And then we're referencing the program where the money is coming from. So the FOIA itself is pretty straightforward. And the data we get back, let's see if this loads, is your standard spreadsheet, is a giant spreadsheet of, mostly dairy farm names. So I've pulled some of the data that was on this off for this presentation, but we can see the dairy farm name, the address, including state, county, city, the payment amount, so disbursement amount here in column G, and that ranges everywhere from a few $1,000s to several $1 million. And interestingly, Crystal, like the chicken payments, we're seeing this huge consolidation at the top for payments. You've got, let's say hundreds of payments going out to farms, but the majority of the money going to a very small number of farms. So in California, we were just looking at this for the payments last year and this year, 20% of all payments, and that's $220 million. So 20% of $220 million went to 4% of farms. So, and these were payments that were, between $4.5 million and $1.5 million. So just like huge payments to these mega dairies.
These are those ones in your article, like Prado Dairy and Williams Family Dairy, Meadowvale Dairy. They all around the $1 million, $1.5 million mark.
Yep. And those are the payments from last year. And, we just got back and have not yet released some of the data from 2025. Same FOIA request, just different time period. And the rate we're seeing, the rate of payments is massively increased. It's like 1,000% more payments in 2025 than in 2024. We paid something $80 million in the first 6 months of 2024. in the first 6 months of 2025, it's almost $250 million. So I expect this trend is going to continue. I don't know if it'll continue at the same rate, but my guess is, Crystal, that we're going to end up, bailing out American dairy farms for, more than $1 billion. Would be my guess.
Incredible. And in your report, you say the size of these payments is notable not only because they represent large expenditures of taxpayer dollars to industrial producers, but also because ELAP eligibility for milk losses states that a person or legal entity with an AGI, I guess that's annual gross income, that exceeds $900,000 will not be eligible to receive ELAP payments. And that these companies received for milk losses exceeded the maximum adjusted gross income allowed, suggesting that if in fact producers like these operations below the $900,000 threshold, they may have been compensated in total for more than they make in a given year.
Yep. Yeah, we don't know what's going on with that. That's really squirrely. It seems like that these payments, or many of the payments at the top, could violate the requirements of the program. And so, we're not sure whether we're just interpreting the rules of that program wrong, or whether they've waived them. This was sort of an emergency declaration that was made last summer. And it's possible that in addition to adding bird flu as one of the reasons why farmers can seek funds from this program, they've changed the requirements. They may have changed the reporting requirements. They may have changed the eligibility requirements. So we're going to have to go back and see if we can't get any documents about how the program's requirements have changed, which will have to be another round of FOIAs, because we don't know from just what they've published on their site. It seems like many of the payments that they're making violate the program's rules. And so we have to understand whether that's, they've changed the rules or we're missing something.
Are there audits going on? Is the USDA auditing these farms to find out? Or, how do we know that they are following the rules or not?
Yeah, the language in the ELAP program is like, it's very qualified, is how I would describe it. It's like, it says the USDA may request information about your milk production and how much, calculate how much milk loss you've had, but it's all may. It's no requirements to submit. The only thing that we know you have to submit is you have to submit a positive test result that your herd has bird flu. So you got to send a sample to a state lab. It's got to come back, shows that it's positive. But once it is, everything else that you're submitting, so far, we don't know that any of that is verified independently by the USDA. It may be just farmers saying, hey, we lost $1 million in milk, last month. And the USDA saying, great, we're happy to send you $1 million check. We're not going to send anybody out to make sure that that's really true, or do any kind of like vetting of the documents you send us, if they even sent anything. Like we'll start to FOIA some of these underlying information for each underlying payment and see what we get back. My guess is that they will black out most of it and say that it's confidential business information. They'll redact most of it. But we're going to try to see if we can find out, like, how much are these farms really doing to prove that they really have had losses. And not to say that like most farmers are lying about this. We know that bird flu is now, endemic in California dairy farms, for example, but we don't know that what they're claiming in terms of the scale of losses they have is accurate, or that the USDA is doing anything to try to verify the scale of losses.
Yeah, it makes sense to not. You don't have to call someone a thief to check the till, right? Like, you need to check. I ran lots of businesses. We counted the money every night to see if anybody was stealing without calling anybody a thief. We're supposed to check on that stuff. I guess my other question is, how is ELAP? I'm not as familiar with this program as I am with others. It's kind of new for me. I'm a little ignorant. But what was the public messaging, and how does this contradict? How do these findings contradict that? Like, I guess I feel like there's always a cash grab going on with these programs. These farms are always got their hands out. So is the way it's being sold to the people different than what's actually occurring?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, that's a great question. This program is about disaster relief. This is to help farmers who've had an act of God, kind of deal, extreme weather, floods, fires, colony collapse. Like, disease, really uncommon disease outbreaks, things that are totally outside of the control of farmers and ranchers in America. I don't think bird flu qualifies as that. This is a problem that emerged in industrial farms, industrial poultry, and now industrial dairy, and is almost exclusively sort of continuing on industrial animal farms. And from that perspective, I don't think it's an act of God. The USDA's own inspector generals, when looking at some of these bailouts to chicken producers, have said that their own requirements for biosecurity for chicken farms aren't working. They say, oh, well, in order to get a payment, you've got to have good biosecurity. The USDA says that that's not real, that those audits aren't happening, that the biosecurity measures aren't being implemented. So these farms aren't doing anything, seemingly, to try to reduce the spread of bird flu. They're just getting payments. And now, unlike an extreme weather event, bird flu is now endemic in America. We are going to have it every year, year after year. So it's like, this is a problem that is not going away. We're using this like program that's meant for these like one-time extreme events to just continue to subsidize producers for, what are very risky farming practices.
That's super important, right? Because like if they were building in the floodplain and they flooded, we would then require them to make adjustments to how they rebuild so that they would be less susceptible to the flood, or maybe they're outside the flood. We'd figure that out and try to make it so the money went someplace. But this is not an act of God. This isn't a 100-year flood or a tornado. This is something that we can plan for. This is part of doing business in America now. There's going to be bird flu.
Yep, I think that's right.
And I'm just pulling up Google Maps right now to show this is 4K Family Dairy, where a place where you talk about in your documents. It's right next to, this is Pittman Family Farms, this poultry facility. I noticed that Pittman's depopulated this facility, I think back in October or something. October 2000 of last year, I guess. And I saw them cleaning up everything. So I've always been curious too, that these dairies, and we've seen this with the genomic data, these dairies spread bird flu to these poultry facilities. And we think possibly through their ventilation systems and such. And these places these poultry facilities right next to these dairies, it's constantly going to continue to reinfect these poultry facilities time after time, unless they really manage to somehow make their ventilation systems virus tight. I just think dust, flies, who knows, can possibly spread. So
these are not like manufacturing clean rooms. These are, you can't keep dust particles out of them. They're giant tunnel ventilated metal barns, or
even rats or cats or all sorts of animals that are coming and going on these.
Well, and on the industrial dairies, with industrial chicken barns, you have a hope kind of keeping some pests out because it's like a steel structured sided building. With the feedlot dairies, these are open to the air. You've got wild birds coming to eat the rows of feed and poop all over it. Like, this isn't I don't know how you could. There are things you can almost certainly do to try to mitigate some of these individual biosecurity issues. Like, I know some farmers use these noise cannons to try to scare away, migratory birds, which don't work. Yeah, exactly. But there are you could imagine that there are a couple of things you could do to try to slightly reduce it. But fundamentally, these are just giant disease pits. You've got tens of thousands of animals, or in the case of poultry, potentially millions on a single operation that are either open to the air or moving a huge amount of dust and air through, with all kinds of interactions between migratory birds. So I think it's impossible to stop the spread at this point.
The measures they're taking, they're, even the ones that they have, that even if they follow all the rules, it's a little laughable, right? And everyone we've talked to, they're like, bird flu is here to stay. It's not to still, this is the ventilation shutdown argument, right? Like, if we are continuing to do this over and over again, then ventilation shutdown is not not counted in this tier. It should be a different tier because it isn't this one-time crazy thing that happened. This is happening all the time. Someone asked, is it like the regular flu? Kinda, right? Every year it comes back. We try to prepare for it. Like, yeah, it's basically here to stay.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a great question with the regular flu. I mean, or COVID. When we have these endemic flu viruses, we do things from a public health perspective to try to mitigate the spread and to make the infections less dangerous. We're not doing any of those for bird flu. We could, for example, vaccinate birds. Other countries are vaccinating birds. We're not vaccinating birds. Why not? Because the chicken industry doesn't want to vaccinate birds. They want to keep exporting chicken, and some countries that buy our chicken don't want it if they've been given vaccines. And so the chicken industry's, economic interests are more important than our public health concerns in this case.
Or even what Crystal said, like virus-tight buildings. You could do it, but it would raise the cost of chicken flesh and eggs. Like
every poultry facility is like BSL for facility.
Totally.
You could do it. Like if you throw enough money at a problem, you can make that happen. But it would. The cost of eggs is going to go up, and we're not willing to seek alternative protein sources.
Yeah, I mean the cost. One of the things obviously we saw with the bird flu in the poultry industry is that obviously I think everyone probably experienced this, whether you buy eggs or not. You saw the price massively increase. I mean, huge percent increase, and economists are saying that something like 90% of that increase was because of bird flu. I mean, some amount of it could have been profiteering from these companies.
I think, I think a higher number was from price gouging. I think, but I mean, but I'll take the standard narrative.
But I mean, whether it's 50-50 or 90-10 or whatever it is, like you probably got some of both. We're going to have these big price shocks, especially in the egg industry, but potentially in the chicken meat industry or in the dairy industry, depending on how bad the outbreak gets, because of bird flu. And that seems to be pretty much permanent now if we're not able to somehow control the spread of the virus.
Yeah, this is a little off topic, but Crystal and I were watching the House Committee and Agriculture meeting about the review of Prop 12, and bird flu came up when Jim Costa came because he said, bird flu is affecting the cost of all of these things. How could you say with a straight face that it's this Prop 12 or it's these animal welfare measures that are the ones that are the culprits? So it feels like everyone seems to be kind of got their hand in the cookie jar all of a sudden as the bird flu craziness is going on still.
Yeah, no surprise that the industry is going to try to use any kind of justification that's in the popular sort of like public sphere to make a case for their preferred positions. Like, oh, well, we've got bird flu, so now we can't do cage free. It's less biosecure. We're gonna we can't incur the cost. Egg prices are already going up. Meanwhile, these things are not at all related.
Yeah, it's interesting in France where they do vaccinate. What they do is they do a lot of testing. And when there is any mortalities on these facilities, they test them for bird flu. And if they are bird flu positive, they still cull the whole flock. So it doesn't mean that just because we vaccinate, we won't be depopulating birds. And unless we just want to pretend that it doesn't exist, like I worried is already happening with a lot of the broiler facilities, is they are suffering some losses, but they're kind of hiding it and sending them to slaughter. And that's why we ended up with cats being fed raw turkey meat that was potentially positive with bird flu. I think those were bird flu positive turkeys that were sent to slaughter. And Foster Farms, we got some FOIA documents that their truck arrived with 20% of the birds showing signs of illness, and they didn't want to test. And this was a turkey flock. So maybe turkeys, people, and some broilers think that they can get away with just not reporting these illnesses and just sending their birds to slaughter.
Interesting. Why didn't the USDA inspector condemn them if there was such a high rate of visible illness?
There was some back and forth emails.
Speaking of FOIA, we got a great FOIA about that.
Foster Farms management doesn't want us to test I think they probably should have. I don't know if the birds ended up going to slaughter or not, or if they said no, we're not going to let this truck in. Who knows? We just got a couple of emails and don't have the whole story, but that was really
But one
interesting.
of those emails said 20% had flu-like symptoms of the arriving for slaughter. So
yeah,
It means all those birds had bird flu. I mean, if
That's what I-
20% are
Yeah.
showing clinical signs, that means all of them have it probably.
I think,
Yeah.
for sure. That's why they were all being there for slaughter. I mean, even when we went to a slaughterhouse up in Northern California, the guys working there were saying that the birds were coming in were far younger. It was different now. The egg laying hen, because they only slaughter egg laying hens there, and they're saying they come in far younger. And I think that was also, I think that's why these animals are there. Why they're not lasting as long in captivity. I wonder, Doctor, if you would just briefly, because it seems like there's a few people in the chat that don't know the difference between culling and depopulation. We covered what FOIA is. Could you just briefly cover what the difference is between culling some animals and depopulation?
Well, yeah, like depopulation is when we exterminate all animals on a property because of an emergency or an infectious disease outbreak. So all the animals are gone. Culling usually refers to like just some of the animals where culling, like at the chicken at the end of their egg laying cycle, culling them, or like a dairy cow who's aged out, who's 4 or 5 years
Or
old and isn't
lame, or-
producing as much milk anymore, culling her. But sometimes they say culling when they refer to depopulation too, and sometimes they refer to it as having to euthanize all of the animals,
Yeah.
which is an incorrect use of the word, because euthanasia should refer to the humane ending of a life of one who is suffering, which depopulation is not that.
Depopulation
These
isn't
are-
that. Because would it be also safer to assume, not assume, but would it be safer to say that culling, though common in practice, depopulation really isn't until this bird flu thing. Now it's very popular, but depopulation was uncommon, at
Yeah,
least, and if
it's
not rare.
yeah, because the AVMA guidelines for the depopulation of animals first came out in 2019, and depopulation was never a thing. We never had to develop new methods of mass killing until fairly recently, because the numbers of animals confined got so big. Like, this isn't a thing that used to exist. We didn't used to have such large numbers of animals confined. So then we, over the past 50 years have developed this, and now we have to figure out new ways to mass kill lots of animals at once. So that's
New and creative ways to kill 1 million animals at a time sometimes.
yeah.
So
Yeah, it's so awesome. I want to know, Andrew, how did you get into FOIAing in the first place? Like, what was your first?
I think I saw a T-shirt that said said something like FOIA and find out, like fuck around and find out, and I was like, oh, I want to find out more. I mean, it was
Really?
mostly that we've long been sort of critics of how we regulate farms in this country, and the ways in which the USDA and other government agencies sort of prioritizes industry interests over public benefit, whether that's public health or consumer safety and consumer protection. And in order to really make the case that that's true, you got to have the receipts, you got to have the details. And so, the way to get that is through FOIA. The government's going to give you one picture on their public facing presence, their press releases and their websites. And then you get a very different picture when you talk to, agency staff, or even better, when you get the materials and conversations that they're having when they don't necessarily think anyone's watching. So, we sort of started, I think with one project where we were looking for something very specific, and now it's become sort of one of our go-to investigative tools. I mean, we have a whole spreadsheet in our organization about all the FOIAs we have out and all the ones waiting back. And at any one time, we probably have, a dozen FOIAs outstanding. And some of the information comes back and it's not useful and there's nothing there that we can, do anything with. But sometimes you get these nuggets. Sometimes you get that email between Don Jr. and the Pilgrim's Pride CEO saying, thanks for the quid pro quo. No, I'm just kidding.
Maybe we got to start
for it.
I am hoping for it. I'm hoping for something like that. I really am. I think that there's and it doesn't have to be him. Someone from SEC, just somebody, because someone at the SEC is talking like that. Because
there was certainly pressure from the administration. Otherwise, why would they do it?
That's exactly it. And they've been pushing back for so long until now. And it's the same dudes that used to push back and now they're not. Can I ask you a couple more questions about the article from Farm Forward that I read today? I just wrote down a couple of questions. If I know we're running out of time, but I want to just get a couple in there.
Please.
Okay. The one I wanted to know was about workers, because I was reading that up to 7% of workers might be contracting these. I read on Wikipedia today, but 7%.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And the CDC coordination with the USDA, are we seeing, like, with the viral spread into dairy cows and the associated human worker infection rates, what gaps exist in that current surveillance between CDC coordination and USDA as seen through these FOIA documents?
I mean, we don't have a lot of FOIA speaking specifically to the public health coordination. Those would be really interesting questions. My guess is the holes are massive. California Department of Food and Ag, CDFA, they're doing some surveillance and some testing. They have some public health clinics up in dairy country in California. Those are like voluntary clinics where people can go in and get tested if they have symptoms or are worried about being sick. The CDC was doing some surveillance, but they just sort of stepped down their emergency surveillance program. Mm-hmm. Now it's just under their sort of like typical seasonal flu surveillance, which means there's less coordination going on with CDC. And then just in general, like this CDC, USDA have all had massive layoffs, have all been doged. Yeah. So, the number of staff who are working on these issues, whether it's bird flu or anything else, disease monitoring, et cetera, way fewer people, way less resources. So, totally. And you put on top of that, and there was some reporting about this, I think earlier this week, you layer on top of that the ICE raids on, in farm country and specifically in dairy operations. Many farm workers and many dairy farm workers are undocumented, or even if they are documented, are going to be worried, understandably, about being thrown in alligator Alcatraz. And so they're not going to go get tested if they get sick. There's no chance of that.
The lack of access to healthcare. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're going to have no idea what happens if there's an outbreak. I mean, we could be way down an outbreak path before we know it. Like I have contacts in the dairy industry in California. I was talking to a rancher in Northern California, and he was saying, "Oh yeah, I almost certainly had bird flu. I had it. My wife had it. My kid had it. My dog had it. Like we were all sick. There was nowhere for us to get tested, but like, I'm almost certain I had it." And he's like, "Yeah, our feed mill was closed for a while because the whole family that runs the feed mill all got sick from some kind of, flu. It wasn't COVID. They all tested for COVID. It wasn't COVID." So like, my guess is that the spread, as that CDC research showed, 7% of dairy farm workers had bird flu antibodies. My guess is the spread is already much further into the community than we know. And so like, yeah, who knows if there's enough? Yeah, almost certainly there's not enough testing and coordination going on.
Well, does the incentivization? Okay, so does the bailouts that we're talking about in your article, does that incentivize repeated outbreaks? I think it might. Like, it seems like with each outbreak, there's an evolution of these viruses. So this is why we have seasonal flu, and every year it's different. You got to get a different shot if you're someone who gets shots. And it doesn't, by bailing them out constantly, aren't we just incentivizing more outbreaks? Aren't we just
creating? We certainly think so. I mean, if these farms had to change their practices to reduce bird flu risk, like if it was in their economic interest to do so, I think we'd probably have less spread. People would make different choices about how they farm animals, so they were less likely to get bird flu outbreaks. And so every time we cut a check to an industrial dairy company, industrial chicken company, they see that and think, great, we're going to continue business as usual, because either, we get paid or we get paid. And so we have no reason to, install new biosecurity methods. Whether or not they work is unclear, but we have no reason to give birds more space or dairy cows more space. We have no reason to take more protection for for workers on our operations. We have no reason to do any number of things that might cost them money, might cost them time, but might make the public safer. And so, we certainly think that it's at the very least, these payments need to be connected to a risk assessment, basically. And like many other government programs, if you're, in an industry, let's say oil and gas or something else that occasionally has quote unquote disasters, and you get payments, you should have to pay into that like an insurance program. So at the very least, these companies need to have a financial stake in, in these payments. And I think the combination of those things could either encourage better practices on farms, or is it going to at least save taxpayers money? This is money we don't need to be spending on this. We could be spending it on other things, perhaps maybe getting prepared for when this becomes a more serious human pandemic.
Well, Ashley Peterson, Senior Vice President of Scientific and Regulatory Affairs at the National Chicken Council, disputed these suggestions. And in the New York Times article said, indemnification is in place to help the farmer control and eradicate the virus, regardless of how the affected birds are raised. She said in an email, the criticism, she added, were the work of vegan extremist groups who were latching on to an issue to try and advance their agenda. So
of course they said that. I mean, this is a great way for the big chicken integrators to avoid having to pay their farmers. I mean, that's really what this is about for them. It's like, if the government picks up losses, Tyson doesn't have to. And so, they've outsourced the risk onto the farmers and to the taxpayers. And, even though they're dictating exactly how those birds are raised, exactly what genetics get used, how healthy those birds are or aren't, how risky those farms are or aren't, and Tyson has no responsibility for the outcome.
Yeah, and it's wild that the Tyson will get the indemnity payments and the bailouts. Like now it's $17 an egg-laying hen, while the contract farmer gets pennies on the dollar compared to that. I don't know if that's changed under Trump or if it's still pretty minimal what the contract farmer gets. Have you looked into that at all?
No, I haven't looked into that, and I would be curious. I mean, I can't imagine that's changed.
Yeah, I don't
all of Trump's rhetoric about being pro-farmer, they're pro-agribusiness. They're not pro-farmer.
Yeah,
but it sounds like the alternative would be like the modest alternative. I mean, I'm looking for a revolution in the way we have protein production in the country, but the modest solution seems to be just that we follow the oil industry and these other industries that have had spills. Like when Deep Horizon blew up and they had to plug it, and we had to spend all these billions of dollars by these deep sea adventures. We force British Petroleum and others to pay into that system so that we don't have to pick up the tab, right? Isn't that what?
Yep, that's exactly right. I mean, these companies should be on the hook for the disasters they create. I don't know. That should be totally uncontroversial.
And yet you must get pushback. Yeah. Do you get pushback as Farm Forward? I mean, what kind of pushback have you guys experienced? That maybe from CDC, USDA, or just?
Yeah, I mean, we've been trying to advance a concept for a bill in Congress that would do just this. Wouldn't take away the payments. Would just make them be based on a risk assessment, and would make farms that are highly risky pay into an insurance program that the USDA can pay out for outbreaks. We thought, okay, this is like common sense, good fiscal policy, and we've been shopping around the concept and, hoping that we could get bipartisan support. And I got to say, I'm not surprised, but I am kind of still surprised that cannot get much interest from the Republican Party in this. Like, there are definitely Democratic congresspeople who are interested, but even the fiscally conservative libertarian think tanks, many of those are like, yeah, this is a good idea. We should do this. But they're saying, can't get Republicans on board because they don't want to do anything to regulate the meat industry. So
because they're not conservative anymore is why that's happening.
Not fiscally conservative, certainly. Yeah.
Right.
So
they're not conservative in the traditional Republican way. Yeah.
You've got a big story coming out on Monday. Hopefully, we won't say more about that unless you want to. But yeah, where can people find you if they want to learn more about your work?
Yeah, folks can find us at farmforward.com or on any of the social platforms at FarmForward. So feel free to check out our stuff, and always happy to talk more with FOIA interested, FOIA curious about how to get your hands dirty. Happy to be a
I
resource.
think we need to make a new T-shirt. We need to make the FOIA
and find out.
FOIA and find out.
We can. I'm sure that's not copywritten. We can make our own T-shirts, Crystal.
Let's do it.
Right
You guys,
here
you guys need merch for your show.
We definitely do.
We'll inspire more people to go FOIAing with that shirt, and that inspired you to go FOIAing, and hopefully we can inspire more people to go FOIAing. So
can I ask one more question? Like, I have a big picture, like zoom out question about just my last one, if you don't mind. Like broader implications. So this case study reflects a broader systemic vulnerability in the U.S. food system. So what key shift do you think is the most urgent from policy levers to consumer awareness? What's the big, if you had your druthers magic wand time, that you can make a big shift, what would it be?
Yeah, I mean, I think something like the bill that Senator Cory Booker put forward called the Farm System Reform Act is in the right direction. I mean, this is about, putting on a moratorium for the largest CAFOs, no more giant industrial animal farms, and then, incentives over the next several decades to shift investments towards more humane, more sustainable, less pandemic risky farming operations. And those are going to come with long time horizons. These kinds of changes take a long time, but governments routinely set agricultural policy directions for 50-year chunks, and that's the kind of thing we need. We're going to need major changes in how we produce food, both animal-based foods and plant-based foods, and that's going to come with probably some amount of diet change and different production practices. And the Farm System Reform Act, Industrial Animal Agriculture Accountability Act, those are the kinds of things that I think will start to set us in the right trajectory. So if I had my magic wand, I'd love to see those get attached to the Farm Bill this fall, but I don't think that's likely given Republican control of Congress.
Yeah,
well, we can hope. We can dream. We got another 5 years before the next Farm Bill.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we'll wait maybe more. Depending, we keep extending them. It could be like 7 or 8. So yeah, could be another half a generation before we're able to take another swing at it. But we'll certainly try.
Well, awesome work, Andrew.
Thanks,
keep up the good work, and keep finding out what they're doing. So thank you for joining the show.
Talk soon, guys.
Thank you.
We'll
Bye,
talk
Andrew.
to you later.
Awesome.
Oops, I'm sorry. I clicked. We both clicked remove at the same time.
You gotta let me drive.
I know.
Well, I thought that was very illuminating. I really like talking with Andrew and listening to what he's got going on. And even though my FOIA came back, this is what you got to be able. You got to be resilient. Crystal always preaches resilience, and so do I. What's funny, I remember a long time ago, I've been thinking about this a lot because you were talking about the resilience of activists. And one of the questions that I got asked very frequently when I was a manager and a hiring manager at that, they said, what quality do you think is the most important in a new hire? And I said resilience, because in hospitality, you've got to be eating bowls of fecal material and keep going, and because the next guest, the next person who walks in the door might be the one that changes your night, leaves you $100 tip or something like that. You've got to be, when I'm hiring servers or bartenders, I always wanted people to have that mindset, like you've had a bad night, but that last person who walks in the door, they could be the one. And that's how I feel. I like my FOIA. Okay, maybe I'll be waiting for 36, but I learned a lesson today from Andrew, and he's had so much success with it. It gives me hope again. So we need to learn resilience in the movement, in all movements.
Absolutely. And I think, veterinarians too, like we have the same thing. It's like, oh, you lose a patient, patient dies on you, client's angry that it didn't work out. And then you got to keep going so you can help the next patient. So, it's hard, but you got to learn those skills to keep going and find some meaning in the challenges and move forward. Viktor
Yes,
Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. Read it, and your life is not as bad as his was.
your life is not.
Guarantee it.
Well, yeah. Although comparison is also the thief of joy.
Yeah,
On this Sunday, Chip and
we
I
can't
and
compare oppression and challenges. That's not
right.
good either. That was toxic of me.
No, I don't think it was
apologize.
toxic. I just like to add it's
Yeah.
riffing on what you got. On
Mhm.
Sunday, I'm doing Ethical Underground. We're going to talk about trolley experiments, trolley problems, and you are doing something on Monday with me. What are we doing on Monday? Because we normally we wouldn't be on
Oh,
this Monday. So what's going on Monday?
it's Vegan World Radio 90.1 FM Houston. We're usually there
Yes.
every other Monday, but we got called in short notice, and
Mhm.
I want to talk about what happened in the Ag Committee again. If you want to talk about it, but who knows what else will happen on the news, and we maybe will report on Andrew's story that comes out on Monday too.
Yeah,
So
that'd
I
be
think that
great if
would
we
be a
can.
good content for that.
I think it'll be a good episode. KPFT.org is where you can stream it live.
Mhm.
And or if you're living in the Houston area, Crystal and I are going to be flying out to Houston. We'll be there
Mhm.
and live at 90.1 KPFT FM.
Yep. We fly
And
out to Houston every
every
Monday
other
that we are
week,
on the show. Yeah.
every other
And then
week we
fly
got
back.
and this week we got
First class,
another
of course. No.
yeah, first class because public radio,
That's how
listener supported radio. That's how we
listener-supported radio does it.
listener supported radio. They fly us first class every
Yeah.
other week, and this time 3 times
Mhm.
so we'll be on live on KPFT this Monday and then the one after as well. So
7 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Pacific.
right.
And somebody's asking me if I went to UF. No, I went to UC Davis, of course. Do I sound like I went to UF?
University of
Anyway,
Florida?
I think that's what they mean. But yeah, you can any quick Google search will find I went to UC Davis. Go Aggies. And what are the differentiating symptoms of bird flu? Like all diseases, bird flu looks exactly the same. So you've got like lethargy, decreased appetite, neurologic symptoms. That's sort of the bird flu thing. Although cows don't have neurologic symptoms for some reason, but I'm suspicious. I think we don't know how to recognize neurologic symptoms in cows, but every other species has neurologic symptoms. Although there's the whole,
I
thing,
would also say
herbivores don't show neurologic symptoms in flus, which is
as it seems like
maybe a
herbivores
thing.
don't show neurological symptoms and flus as early as carnivores. That's what I think is what I read a while back when we were talking about that before, that the
Yeah.
herbivores still get them, but they don't get them as quickly. But no, the other thing, that's why you have Parkinson's might be related to
Yeah.
earlier
Like,
viral infections, like
like
40
if
years.
you get sick with flu, you might end up with Parkinson's later.
That's
Hmm?
wild to me.
That's scary.
That is super. I am really lucky. I think it's because I wash my hands more than most people. I don't know. I'm really lucky. Either that or just good genes or something. I almost never get sick. And Karina, she works with kids and she works with special needs kids, and they're messier than other kids. So
Mhm.
she gets sick and I never get it. So like I'm lucky. But the other thing though, Crystal, don't humans get like crazy red eyeballs? Like, man, that picture that you show in your slide deck
Yeah.
with the eyes,
Mhm.
they look like
Like
they got
the
the 28
hemorrhagic
days later. Yeah.
sclera. Yeah, and I don't know if that was because that farmer had a high dose of milk that was infected with the virus shot into his eyeball, or like, any
Mhm.
of those dairy parlors, you have aerosolized milk in high concentrations in the dairy parlors. So that could have led to that. But yeah, that's pretty wild symptoms there.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, thank you everyone for joining us with FOIA Friday. It was kind of a great, I thought this was a really great episode, and I was excited about everything that I learned through it, and I can't wait to file another FOIA. I think my FOIA for what we normally end the episode is what we're going to FOIA next, and what I'm going to FOIA next, I'm going to do the same thing, but I am going to break it up the way the way Mr. deCoriolis described. I'm going to break it up into smaller bite-sized pieces.
mhm.
I thought, because, man, I thought, man, if I just throw a bunch at him, I'll see what sticks. But I guess
Yeah.
I'm just one guy. I don't want to do all these, but I'm gonna just make it smaller and see if I can get something.
Mhm.
Maybe I'll get what I need. You know.
Yeah. I'm probably going to FOIA the USDA Agriculture Marketing Service for any mention of, and my specific emails of specific people at the USDA Agriculture Marketing Service about 12007, the section of the Farm Bill, which they're talking about in the Ag Committee hearing. And maybe even, what are some other things I could FOIA related to that? Oh, I also want to FOIA any communications about cultured meat from the USDA Agriculture Marketing Service. I think that would be good. And that was the fact that we haven't FOIA that is a major misstep on our part. So,
well, we still got time. We FOIA every week. Luckily, we were able to catch that misstep. Everyone should like and subscribe to Crystal on her channels. And don't forget to hit the like button if you're watching on mine. And thank you all for joining us for FOIA Friday.
see you next
good night,
time.
Crystal.
Good night.
I feel like it's, I mean, do you ever see Burns and Gracie and George? George
No,
and
I don't know
Gracie?
what that is.
George Burns and Gracie, I forget what her last name was. They were married, but they were he would always say good night, Gracie. He always had a big cigar. So he'd go like,
Don't tell me
goodnight,
what to
Gracie.
do is what I would say.
And so he would say good night, Gracie. And she would say, good night, Gracie. Never mind. It's
I'd just
Bye,
be like,
everybody.
don't tell me what to do.
Don't tell me what to do, Sky. I'm not going to say goodbye to anybody. I don't care what you say. See you next Friday for FOIA Friday, everybody. Thank you. FOIA Friday.
Freedom of information. Friday. FOIA. Friday.
Dr. Heath is funny too.